Hey guys, Alex Cyclist here. Just here to update a video or piggyback off of a video I made about TPU tubes versus latex versus tubeless. I had about a little under 18,000 views on it, and a lot of comments, about over 300 comments and dialogue back and forth. And just wanted to update my take on the tubeless latex, and my Factor Ostro has a TPU in it because, again, I wanted to give it a fair shot. So I'm riding all three. And again, maybe it's not 100% fair because they are in different frames, different materials, and different stiffness, but I think you'll find my conclusion rather interesting. So with further ado, so my original complaint about TPU, and again, I'm just going to scroll through the bikes here just to give you something to look at while I'm talking. The original complaint I had about TPU was it felt a little plasticky. It made the tire a little bit more chattery, on a little bit more of a chip, I won't say chip seal, but more of like a chip seal type road, where it wasn't like a fresh layer of asphalt and real smooth. And it just allowed a little bit more vibration to come up and through the frame on my Factor. So I've always been a huge lover of latex. I feel that it's lighter than butyl. It's definitely a lot more comfortable. And I liked it a lot on my LA Sprints, and I liked it on my Cannondale System 6. And I just figured, you know what, let me try TPU. It was the buzz at the moment. And I tried it, and I liked how smooth that it was on smooth road. I mean, it was very light, very snappy, very airy. You're able to turn that wheel and tire over really quickly because of how light it is. My Revolutes come in at around 22 grams per tube, which is really, really low. Latex comes in anywhere between like 40 to 70, 80-ish on the high side, depending upon the version. And then butyl is usually ticking over 100 grams. But I had a lot of feedback, people saying they love their Turbolitos, they love their Vittorias, and that's fine. I think they're great. And I actually, to keep this short, I use all three, but for different reasons on different bikes. So let's start with the S5 here. So I decided, because again, personal preference, that on an Aerobike, it's extremely stiff, right? There's very deep tubes, and I just wanted to have the most plush ride. Again, reason for this wasn't speed, it wasn't low rolling resistance. It was the most compliant and plush ride on the Aerobike, right? You can see here, although this frame does absorb vibration good, it's stiff, and I wanted to have a big, cushy 30 millimeter Vittoria Corsa Pro, which is their updated cotton tire, 120 TPI, with their electronic, I guess it was electrostatic vulcanization, where the tread is rather not glued but adhered to the cotton casing. So I chose, again, tubeless on this bike, which I was also anti-tubeless for a very long time because of the catastrophic failures that I had, but I feel like the sealant has come a long way. So here we are. So I chose to love tubeless on this bike for the reason that it's stiff, it's not very compliant, and I wanted the best possible feel on this bike if I had to put more than 50 miles on. All right, let's move over to the LA. So if you've ridden an LA Sprint, you will know that this is an extremely fun bike. It's extremely rowdy, extremely stiff, very responsive, and it's really fun to ride. I would say it's probably the most fun bike and frame I've ever ridden, just because it's so lively, right? It's just aluminum, some carbon wheels. And there's times where I've ridden, there's imperfection in the roads, and the rear wheel pops you off the saddle because there's a little bit of daylight because of imperfections or a divot in the road. I mean, it's just a fun, lively bike to ride. And I chose to go with latex on this bike with 25 millimeter Continental GP5000s, which are about 215 grams plus a 50 gram latex. Puts it in a pretty comparable spot. And these are older Roval CLX 64s that are hookless. And I just like this for being the crit bike and also giving it a little bit of a ability to dampen the feel of the road on a aluminum bike, right? A metal bike is going to resonate a little bit more than a carbon would, which should absorb some energy and sort of absorb some feedback. So I chose to go with latex on this specific bike because, again, it's a very stiff bike. There's a lot of road buzz that comes through the frame, and I felt that latex would give this bike, and how infrequent that I ride it, and purposely built for crit racing or a local mock crit, is the reason why I chose latex on this bike. Now, I'm not going to go upstairs and get my factor, but I chose to go with TPU on my factor. Now, when I rode the TPU for the first time, it was on my factor with 25 mil tires, and I was using a Vittoria TPU tube. And I felt it was good. It was light and springy and lively, but there was just too much road buzz and chatterness and hardness that I felt. Again, mixing it with the 25 on that bike at about 80 PSI. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give TPU one more try, but I'm going to do it right. I'm going to put 28s on, and I'm going to go drop down the pressure a little bit, right? So I'm down to, I think, 75 in the rear at 70 in the front. And it definitely did change the feeling that I had originally on a smaller tire on that bike. Now, I chose TPU on that bike because, one, it's a light bike. Two, it's meant for climbing and long days in the saddle. And I just love how lively the TPU tire pairs with the GP5, because the GP5 is a very, very light tire. It's like a little bit less than 225 grams in a 28 mil. And the bike just feels so responsive. I mean, that unsprung weight difference, you can feel when you're turning over those cranks and how responsive that rear wheel is. I mean, you can really snap that bike with how stiff it is and how light the TPU tubes make that outer edge of the wheel, right? That unsprung weight, that ability to rotate that outer mass of that wheel. It just feels so lively. So on that bike, with how compliant the Ostro is in its ability to absorb road buzz, road vibration, imperfections in the road, and take some undulating hits for some issues that might be in the road, or some cracks in the road. Like, that bike is extremely stiff, but yet it is so compliant with those pencil stays that I felt that that's the best bike to have a TPU tube in, to benefit from a very light configuration and also a very lively configuration, being the climbing / all-arounder bike. So my conclusion is there's no right tube or there's no right tire or right setup. It's all about what you're using the bike for and how you plan to use it and what you want out of that combination of tire and tube and bike. So my conclusion is that I like all three for very different reasons on very different bikes. So that's kind of my take on that. I can't think I'll get too much negative feedback since I say I like them all, but you never know, it's YouTube. But here we are, and just wanted to update now that I'm back on TPU on the factor, so I can give it a real good long-term honest opinion. And again, I think that the wider tire and lower pressure made it feel more latex-like in terms of its comfort. It's still not as comfortable, doesn't conform to the road as much, but when the road is smooth, the TPU and the wider tire is like silk. So there's really not going to be too many complaints there. So here we are. Just wanted to update the base. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments and hit me up with your opinion on the type of tire or tube that you use. And I will also do a quick shout out to Robb Armstrong, to kind of get me on a larger, wider tire. I was a little hesitant to go this wide, but I will call Robb out that I did speak to him, and he's an awesome guy, so this is all in fun. But I didn't feel that the wider, taller, heavier tire is 10 times more comfortable than anything that I've ever ridden, except it's just so heavy. And it just feels a little sluggish underneath your legs when you go to kind of snap the bike. And so it's a trade-off, right? When you're moving, it's rolling, it's smooth, it's silky. But if you're looking to grab a quick wheel and snap that bike and snap that tire, and come over the cranks, with some meaning, it's just not there. So, again, the reason why I have different bikes for different reasons and different setups. So this bike is meant to be a fast, all-out 26, 27 average type ride where, yes, it's punchy, but it's so responsive and the bike's so aero that I'm hoping that the bike will be more reactive than I have tried it being on solo rides. So that will to be determined. But all in all, I'm very impressed with the wider tires. But I do want to call out Rob and throw it in his way to consider maybe trying a TPU tube in a non-Vittoria tire that's extremely light, like a GP5, 25 or 28 mil, weighing in at like 220, 225 grams, plus a 22 gram TPU tube. I mean, it doesn't get much better and lighter than that. So I urge you to give that a shot, give that a try. And I'd love to hear back your opinion because, I know you've been riding we're a big proponent of the Vittoria Corsa Pros, the Graphene Plus tires, the GPSs, but again, all tubeless and all fairly, large, between 30 up to 34. So I want to urge you to do that and, hear back from you as well and to hear your thoughts about some of the comments and conversations we've had. So appreciate it. If you have any questions, hit them up. Thanks.